Oh, people of YouTube, don't you dare be sour. Clap for good mic work commentaries and feel the power.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Good Mike Work Commentaries back at you with another classic pay-per-view review. This was originally supposed to be a classic pay-per-view watch-along, but as I started putting together my December schedule, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to be available on the night of December 9th to do a watch-along of this show. And of course, today, December 9th, 2021, is the 20-year anniversary of WWE Vengeance 2021 that took place right here in San Diego when Chris Jericho made a little bit of history. So instead of doing a watch-along, I opted to do a recorded review instead and thought this would be a nice little Thursday upload present for you guys ahead of this weekend. December is going to be filled with lots of fun videos, so make sure you stay tuned, subscribe, and like this video. Of course, we are here today to talk about WWE Vengeance 2001. I have a lot of memories of this show because it was a really, really interesting time, which we will get into here as we go. And I thought it would make a really fun review to do since today happens to be the 20-year anniversary of this show. And just to think that it's been 2 decades since this happened is pretty nuts. I was at the pay-per-view prior to this, Survivor Series 2001 in Greensboro, where I saw WWE finally win the war against the Alliance. And the following night was a show I was also at Monday Night Raw after Survivor Series when we had the return of Ric Flair to the company, also the return of Jerry Lawler to the company. Real big night took place the night after Survivor Series in 2001 that set up a lot of what we see here. So we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the circumstances surrounding all of this. As a matter of fact, last month, just for fun, I did a re-upload of my Survivor Series 2001 review that I did a couple of years ago that I wanted to kind of like digitally enhance and add some more photos of myself from when I was at the show and things like that. So that video is up on the channel now. As a matter of fact, I'll stick a link in the description since this is a recorded review. So check that out if you would like, and we will probably talk a lot about the circumstances surrounding the invasion angle, the alliance, you know, the weird situation going on with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle and The Rock and Chris Jericho going in to this match to determine the first ever world champion or undisputed champion, and how a lot of these guys were switching babyface and heel, and the alliance and invasion angle was largely considered to be a massive failure by most of the wrestling audience. So a lot of that stuff was still lingering here, and some of the decisions they were making from a booking perspective had me scratching my head a little bit as a fan. So we'll talk a little bit about that too as we go through, and hopefully you guys will share with me your memories of this show, if you have any, in the comments below. So let me know what you remember of this time, if you were even alive to witness it, and and if you weren't, if you've watched it as you've grown up, let me know what you think of all of it. But we're going to kind of review the whole thing here and take a look back at what I think should have been a much more significant show in wrestling history than what it was. But like I said, really strange times going on here, as we will talk about here in a minute. But anyway, WWE Vengeance 2001 went down on December 9th, 2001 from the San Diego Sports Arena right here in San Diego, California. This arena is now called the Pechanga Arena, and I was actually in this building just this past year, the Raw after SummerSlam back in August. It's still a pretty awesome venue. It's kept up well, but it's pretty old. It was built, I believe, in like 1966, and San Diego is in desperate need for a new arena like this. But WWE has ran countless shows throughout the years here, and of course, like I said earlier, I was not living here in 2001 yet, but I was at the pay-per-view prior at Survivor Series leading up to the build of this whole thing. But the attendance they have listed for this is 11,800, and like I said, this was a really interesting time. Now, a couple interesting notes about this pay-per-view is, number one, the cover is very misleading. The cover is a picture of Triple H holding his sledgehammer, and at the time, they were expecting and hoping that Triple H would be back from his quad injury by then. And he's told the story on, I think, WWE DVD docs and whatnot, that he was rehabbing, and I think maybe months out, they were targeting a December return for him. But as his rehab continued, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to make December, and of course, he wouldn't return until early January and then make his in-ring return at the Royal Rumble. So I think at the time, they were going to have Triple Triple H return on this show and kick off whatever he was going to do. And it was really kind of unfortunate timing that he literally got injured right before the invasion angle kicked off and healed up right when it was over. It's really a shame that Triple H, I've said this a million times throughout the years, it's really a shame that Triple H could not have been more involved in the invasion angle. Now, the invasion angle needed a lot of help because without the top stars in WCW, the Hogans, the Goldbergs, the Stings, the Flairs, guys like that being involved, the invasion angle wasn't going to mean very much, but Triple H would have helped it and added a different dynamic to it. So would have Chris Benoit and Jerry the King Lawler. A lot of big names were kind of absent for that whole thing. And looking back, it's always been a big regret. Like, oh, I wish they would have had more names available for that. So Triple H coming back in after the invasion was quite a shame, but I was ready to have him back because we just talked about this recently on a podcast when Booker T made some comment about Triple H being a bigger star prior to him even being married to Stephanie than CM Punk currently is. And I kind of agreed with that because Triple H was a huge star in DX. He got really over not only with Shawn, but then when he took the group over as a babyface and then transitioning into that cerebral assassin character and doing it so well and winning a couple of titles before even becoming engaged and married to Stephanie. So Triple H did have a hell of a run leading up to this moment. And prior to his quad injury, I was watching a lot of wrestling and I was heavily involved. I even had my own Hotline News phone number for a while there. And I remember the chatter on message boards and online and on the hotlines and stuff regarding Triple H around 2001. Fans really started getting behind him because you know how smart fans like to be. We like to appreciate the work of good heels and good wrestlers and good champions and shit like that. And Triple H was putting in great work. He had a fantastic year 2000, starting things off at the Rumble with Cactus and retaining at Mania and tearing through the year, working with The Rock on top, trading the belt a couple of times, and then into 2001 with his wrapping up his feud with Stone Cold. They did that 3 Stages of Hell match at No Way Out, which was fantastic. Then he tore the house down with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 17. Then him and Austin began the 2-man power trip, won the tag titles. Triple H won the IC title, and even had a great match at like Judgment Day with Kane they got really good reviews from the fans. And I think at that point, the fans, the smart fans, started preferring Triple H over Steve Austin. They started appreciating what Triple H could do in the ring compared to Austin. Austin at that point was limited. You know, yeah, he had the neck surgery. He came back better than ever, but he was still, you know, he wasn't 1992 Stunning Steve from WCW. You know what I mean? In terms of in the ring. So he was limited. Triple H was, you know, he was a badass and he was tearing it up in there. And the fans, I think, really started getting behind him. And prior to that quad injury of his, I think fans were expecting there to be a split between Austin and Triple H to kind of be the babyface and probably beat Austin, probably do a lot of what Kurt Angle did during the invasion angle. And as a matter of fact, later on when we're going to talk about Austin and Angle at this show, this was their 6th straight pay-per-view of working together in some capacity, Austin and Angle. So if Triple H wouldn't have gotten injured, you have to wonder if he would have been inserted into that spot where Kurt Angle was. But then again, his wife, or his, you know, at the time, his kayfabe wife at the time, Stephanie, is on the other side in the alliance. Would they have even made her the owner of ECW had Triple H not gotten hurt? Probably not. I think her coming in to be the owner of ECW was something to involve her in storyline on TV since Triple H was injured. So I think had he not tore his quad, the landscape of the alliance would have looked much, much different and a lot more interesting. So it's a shame he wasn't able to be there for any of that. But basically my point is that the fans really started getting behind Triple H even when he was a heel. And had he not gotten hurt, I think he would have worked against Austin as a babyface and probably beat him for the title at SummerSlam. That would have been my guess. So we as fans were all ready to get Triple H back here for vengeance. They even ran a promo for this at Survivor Series. I remember being in the crowd watching the screen and them running a promo for this show showing Triple H and me getting all excited about it. But we would have to wait until early January when he would come back and they had the big the big video package set to U2's Beautiful Day, and he blew the roof off of MSG and would go on to win the Rumble and win the title at WrestleMania. But no Triple H on this show. They didn't even bother really changing the poster for this. It was already out. It's still around. I think the DVD has got Austin and Rock and Chris Jericho on it, but having Triple H on the poster was a little bit confusing for fans. Another thing that might be a little bit confusing is why this pay-per-view was named Vengeance. Usually Armageddon is in December, or used to be back in the day, but this was 3 months after 9/11, and WWE felt that, I guess, the name Armageddon was insensitive after the 9/11 tragedies type of thing. And if you notice, they also changed Raw is War just to Raw. It was back to being WWE Raw or Monday Night Raw or whatever they called it. So that was kind of the end of the war and Armageddon references. But they would pick it up the next year, correct? By the time we got to 2002, I think Armageddon would return. And it is kind of funny when you think about all the insensitive shit WWE has done throughout that company's history. It amazes me that this is where they draw the line. They felt that having a pay-per-view called Armageddon 3 months after 9/11 would be insensitive. They're right, but why did they choose to change this but not change so many other things? Remember Stephanie's little speech on SmackDown? How she already had her own personal 9/11 when the federal government came after her daddy? How fucking short-sighted, tone-deaf, and goddamn privileged a fucking comment like that is, and they left that in and put it on TV for the world to see, but yet they're worried the pay-per-view Armageddon might offend people. Whatever. I mean, it's they did the right thing here. It just amazes me that how many other things they could do, that would make them look a little bit less insensitive. They don't seem to give a shit about, but this is where they decided to make a change. But it would only be 1 year for Vengeance here. Then Vengeance would move back to, it's been a lot of different, help me out here. What month was Vengeance usually in? Sometimes July, I think. It was always different times of the year, but here in December was kind of a one-time only thing after the tragedies of September 11th. So between Triple H being on the poster and the name of the pay-per-view changing, kind of confusing time, and maybe not really, when you look back on it, the best setting to crown your first ever Undisputed champion, in the main event. But whatever, we're going to get into the show here and talk about it, and I want to get the feedback from all of you guys, what you know of this show, what you remember of it. Did you like it? Did you think it was good or bad? Give me your grades, A, B, C, or D. I'm pretty sure I know where I'm going to grade this show, but I want to hear from you guys as we go through this. Let us know. Anyway, let's get into the show here. Show starts off like an episode of Monday Night Raw with Vince McMahon coming to the ring. Well, I should say before that, they do a big, nice video package intro like WWE would do for pretty much all of their pay-per-views back in the day. This one is set to Fred Blassie. They used Blassie a lot during the invasion to motivate the WWE roster. I think they even did a deal where Stephanie told him she couldn't wait till he died or something like that. But yet they changed the name of Armageddon, whatever. So the show starts with this nice, really well-done video package of Fred Blassie basically sitting down and watching a television monitor, chronicling and showing all of the past WWE and WCW champions, because, of course, these two title belts are about to merge, really for the first time in history. And again, I feel like this could have been a bigger deal than it was. It's even something they could have saved until WrestleMania. If you kick off the invasion at the previous WrestleMania, which they pretty much did, because Shane McMahon had the WCW guys up in the rafters there. They had just done the simulcast where Shane bought the company like 6 days prior to this. What a great way to wrap it up and put a bow on it. Then WrestleMania 18. But too many factors, Hogan and the NWO and shit like that was coming in. But if you were able to keep the WCW and WWE title alive in the company until you got to WrestleMania 18, that would have been the main event for me. I would have merged those two titles in the main event of WrestleMania 18. That would have been the way to do it. But instead, they did it in December at an in-between show that they changed the name of and had the wrong guy in the poster. This is where they choose to do it. A lot of booking decisions were head-scratching back then because they were starting to they had a lot of talent there. There was a lot of stuff to manage, and they didn't know what the future was going to hold, and guys were coming back, and, the wheels started coming off, I think, around this time in terms of things moving too fast for them to plan for. And it felt like that. It feels like that now. WWE has no plans. They don't even try anymore. So at least back then they were trying. They were just maybe not making the best decisions. So Anyway, we get the whole intro there, and then Vince McMahon comes out. Like I said, like an episode of Monday Night Raw. He's going to open up the show with a promo, which is always odd when they do that on pay-per-view. They have done it a few times, but it's always weird when they do. Now, Vince is pissed off because the week before on TV, The Rock had shoved Vince McMahon's head up the ass of Rikishi, kind of payback for him humiliating William Regal. I was in attendance for that to watch William Regal kiss Vince McMahon's ass. You knew he was going to get some comeuppance there for what he was doing, even if Regal is a slimy little heel. Like, just making somebody else kiss your ass is not cool. And of course, he had done the same thing to Jim Ross, where he put on his cowboy hat and they shoved Ross's face in his ass and he's dancing around or doing whatever. So The Rock was there to give Vince some payback for all of that. And they showed a replay of Vince basically kissing Rikishi's ass, and Vince blames the fans for all of this, and he's mad at the fans who are laughing him and mocking him in the audience, and he says that the fans don't understand the misfortunes of billionaires and shit like that, which was pretty funny. Then Ric Flair comes out. So Flair has just been back here for a few weeks. Comes out to the stage, he's wearing like a leather jacket, looks pretty good here, Ric Flair 20 years ago, and basically tells Vince to shut the fuck up because the show is starting, and it does. And Scotty, Too Hottie, and Albert come out for their opening match with Vince in the ring, and they get in the ring and just start dancing around him, which is a pretty funny visual to see. So Vince finally leaves, and we are off and running here with a tag team bout to open things up. Like I said, Scotty, Too Hottie, and Albert taking on Christian and Test. So Christian and Test are teaming up here, but it was kind of cool to see TNA, former TNA, on opposite teams, Test and Albert, opposing each other here. And later on, Test would go and find Trish, another member of TNA, and give her a little bit of shit later on. But not much of a match here. It was okay. I'd probably give it 2.25 stars or something like that. Scotty Too Hottie winds up hitting the worm and like a Bubba Bomb to Christian for the win. So I felt like Albert and Scotty were kind of the underdogs here to the much more formidable, I believe, Christian and Test. But the babyfaces got the win here. Crowd loved it. Pretty decent opener, but also a match I feel like we could have just gotten on Monday Night Raw. We got an Intercontinental title match up next. Edge is getting real close to kind of being on his way out here, isn't he? Isn't he about to get hurt here real shortly? He is defending his Intercontinental title against William Regal. So both of these guys had an interesting last few weeks. Edge, of course, I think unified the IC with the U.S. title at Survivor Series against Test. And William Regal, of course, had to do the ass-kissing thing with Vince McMahon. So he's fresh off that humiliation, and he's going after the IC title here against Edge, but he would not get it. Typical match between these two. They worked a lot during this time. Regal, of course, he's more mat-based. Edge is really starting to come into his own athletically, but again, Edge is kind of getting close to his neck problems and taking some time off as well. So Regal is attempting to go for the Nux several times unsuccessfully. Finally, he goes for him, and I think he even gets him out. By the time he gets him on his hand, Edge is able to nail him with a spear and get the win and retain the Intercontinental title. Decent match, nothing wonderful, but it's Edge and Regal, and they're both pros, and Edge hangs on to the IC title for a little while longer. After that, we go backstage to Ric Flair, who is interrupted by Kurt Angle. Angle storms in, and he basically is just telling Ric Flair that he's going to win. I'm going to do it. You watch. I'm going to go out there and beat Austin first, and then I'm going to beat either The Rock or Jericho later. I'm going to do it. And Ric Flair the whole time is like, okay, good. Go do it. I don't even understand why you're telling me this. It's no problem. And Angle's like, what, you don't believe me? And Rick's like, I don't give a fuck. Go do it. I don't care. It was kind of a funny segment to see Flair just kind of be like, yeah, I get it, dude. Get out of here. But also one of the first times we had seen, Angle and Flair together, although they had shared some TV time prior to this the previous month. But just two legends like that, coming face to face is kind of cool. And, Ric Flair was just starting his, his WWE run here that would begin in ring with his match with Vince McMahon at the Royal Rumble, and he would be in the ring a lot for the next several years starting here. So this was kind of the beginning of all this for Ric Flair. Next matchup was another kind of a dud. This one was not good. This is an experiment WWE tried back in 2001 that I think even by their own admission, and Matt and Jeff's as well, it didn't go well. They attempted to do a Hardy Boy split, which led to a Matt versus Jeff Hardy match here at Vengeance. Now, this was basically set up the previous month at the Survivor Series when they had that cage match against the Dudleys, and Matt Hardy escaped. Jeff Hardy climbed to the top of the cage. All he had to do was drop down, and the Hardys win the titles, but instead he decided to go for a big swanton off the cage, which he missed and landed crashing through a table, allowing the Dudley boys to get the win. Matt was pissed off about that, considered it to be a selfish move by Jeff, and that led to them, I think, brawling and having the split up and having a one-on-one match against each other here. Now, to add a little spice to this, they made Lita the special guest referee. Now, of course, Lita is the kayfabe and real-life girlfriend of Matt Hardy and the good friend of Jeff, and she's part of that Team Extreme package, and she is in the middle here. So we see Matt Hardy and Lita backstage first, and they're talking, and they're reiterating their love for each other. And Lita's like, I love you, Matt. You're my boyfriend. You know that. But I also have a job to do. I'm wearing these stripes, and I got to call the match down the middle or whatever. But Matt says, okay, you do what you got to do. We'll go out and celebrate later or whatever. So you knew something was going to happen there. So Lita comes out first for this. I love it when referees get entrances, and then Matt and Jeff come out separately. But the music, I was curious what they were going to do about the music here because I didn't remember. So I think it's Matt is out first, but the music doesn't stop and restart again. It just keeps playing. So Matt comes out first and then Jeff comes out separately, which was kind of a funny way to do it. And like I said, the match wasn't great. It felt kind of duddy. It just felt like you would think we would get a lot more out of Matt and Jeff if they eventually did a split between these two, and we would. I think their match that they had at WrestleMania 25 was fantastic. That feud was basically made up for this one, and they did it right. I think this was way too early. I did not think at this time the Hardys needed to be broken up. WWE does tend to rush things sometimes, and I think the Hardys had way more mileage left as a tag team in terms of developing their Hardy Boy legacy in the WWE, and to split them up here when they're both so young and you have so much time to do that in the future, I thought was a mistake. And you could tell that the fans weren't really into it either. They didn't really want to cheer for these guys individually. The Team Extreme was a very overact in the company and not something the WWE should be fucking with. So when you see WWE, and granted, it's much worse today, but when you see WWE constantly trying to fix shit that ain't broke, it's a problem that they've really always had. And sometimes they don't know when to leave well enough alone, and they don't know when to just let shit grow and let shit breathe and let the Hardys do their thing. There's going to be a time and a place for a split, but don't do it here when it's just so out of left field and it's not coming off right. So the match between these guys is fine in terms of the mechanics of it because they grew up together. They wrestled each other since they were 3 years old. So in terms of what they can do in the ring, nothing was botchy or clunky or anything like that because they know each other so well. It was just, I guess it was just the emotion behind it, the fan response. Nobody really seemed to be that into watching these guys wrestle against each other because they didn't really know what to make of it all. And plus, you got Lita in the middle, and I think everybody just really, really, myself included, liked them together. So the match continues here for a while, and they basically do a finish that they telegraphed in the backstage segment with Matt and Lita, where she says, I've got a job to do, but I still love you. I still got to do what I got to do out there. So Jeff gets Matt down. He hits a swanton from the top rope. He goes for the pin. Matt gets his foot on the rope, but Jeff grabs it off of there before Lita can even see it. So Jeff has pulled it away before the 3 count, but Matt did have the foot on the rope to begin with, which Lita did not see. Lita goes to count the 3, counts it all the way. Jeff wins, and of course, Matt's going to be pissed. So Matt's pissed because Lita didn't see the foot, even though Jeff yanked the foot off the rope anyway. Once the foot hits the rope, I think there's supposed to be a break there per the rules or whatever. So Matt is furious at Lita, and he storms off and leaves like a complete baby and just loses his fucking shit. Now, this was, if I remember right, you guys can help me in the comments here. I don't know how they tied this up, but if I remember right, I think both Hardys were just off TV for a little while until they both returned at the Royal Rumble on the same page. They worked together, and it was basically WWE's way of saying, hey, we're dropping that angle. The Hardys are back together, at least for now. So I think this was the only match they did. I don't know how they tied this up on TV, the next night on Raw or anything like that, or if they both kind of just stayed absent for a while until they just brought them back together. But either way, it just wasn't, it wasn't a good match. It wasn't the right time to split them up. And I think everything about this was a huge failure, and they shouldn't have done it. And like I said, when they would revisit this many years later, 8 to be exact, in 2009, I think things went much, much better between the two. And that WrestleMania match is one of my favorites. And that's awesome considering how south things went when they tried it the first time. So anyway, that situation looks to be at least over with for now, but we would see another glimpse of Matt and Lita before the show went off the air. Then we go backstage again to a hilarious little backstage segment. The Rock is back there. He's just in his locker room. He's psyching himself up for his what is hopefully 2 matches later on tonight. And Trish approaches him, and she's trying to talk to The Rock, and he's being such a douchebag. Now, I think they're trying to tease some sort of little romanticisms between Trish and The Rock on TV, but I think The Rock... I think Trish could do better. My God, was he such a jerk off here. But it was funny. It was what The Rock did. So Trish is approaching him. She's trying to talk to him or something, but he's just like, no, shh. He's like, The Rock's trying to get ready for his title matches tonight, winning the Undisputed Championship. And he basically tells her that he can't talk right now because he's focused on winning the titles, but she can have some pie later. That's basically what he told her, and shoos her off or whatever. And Trish is like, okay, so I guess she'll get some of that pie if everything works out for The Rock later. But he ain't got no time for Stratisfaction right now. I found that whole thing to be fucking hilarious. Then it's tag team title match time. We got champions Dudley Boys taking on Big Show and Kane. I forgot that they were a team for a little while here. Anyway, Dudleys during this time, of course, they have Stacy Keibler with them, and she was great with the Dudley Boys. I thought she looked so good with them. I mean, plus Stacy, I think, is the hottest diva of all time, but just the way she paired with them, I don't know what it was. It was something about that visual. We had another tag team with a girl with him, with the Hardys and Lita, looked very good, but Stacy with that camouflage and the glasses and shit just looked so good. The 3 of them looked great together. I just really liked the package, and I wish they could have stuck around longer with each other. So the story here was, I guess Kane and Big Show really aren't getting along that well, or they would not get along. They were kind of mashed together here for whatever reason when they're both pretty strong single stars here. So in terms of them coming away with the titles here, I didn't want to see it, because even back then, even 20 years ago, I've always preferred tag teams. Guys that are teams, not just 2 dudes shoved together. You can do that sometimes and formulate a great tag team. The Outlaws were born that way. Even in modern times, we had teams like the Bar and others. But I'm talking about like in a real tag team division, I just prefer teams. I want Lucha Brothers. I want FTR. I want teams, So I was never a fan when they would just stick 2 guys together, and they did that shit all the fucking time. Big Show and Kane were together. Kane and Undertaker together. Big Show and Undertaker together. Jericho and Rock, and Jericho and Austin, and Taker and Austin, and Shawn and Austin and Mankind. And, they just constantly always throwing dudes together, giving them the tag team titles. WCW did that a lot here too. Or did that a lot back in the day too, I should say. But in terms of this particular pairing of the Big Show and Kane, I had no interest in it at all, and I much preferred the Dudley Boys. Now, Stacy, early on in the match, she decides to get in the ring and get involved a little bit, and the Big Show pantses her, pulls down her pants to reveal her panties, and then bends her over his knee and starts spanking her before the Dudley Boys break it up. So, Attitude Era, y'all. Catch it. Kane would accidentally hit the Big Show later on with one of his top rope clotheslines. I think he's going for Devon. Devon ducks. He hits the Big Show instead. They get a little bit pissed at each other, and they're arguing a little bit. Big Show then goes to mess with Stacy some more. I think she's on the apron or something, and he goes to grab her, but Devon stops him. And then we've got an exposed turnbuckle in the corner. Kane is neutralized, and the Dudleys are able to hit the Big Show with a 3D face first into the exposed buckle. He goes down. Dudleys pin him for the win and retain the titles. That was definitely the right decision there. Felt like Big Show and Kane was just thrown together for the sake of throwing them together, and the Dudley Boys are way more fun as a team to be holding championships, and I was really glad to see they retained here, because I really haven't gone back and watched this show. Maybe a couple clips of Jericho winning the title, but never straight through. I do not think I've watched Vengeance 2001 from opening match to main event ever since it happened. So a lot of the stuff was all watching it for the first time, which is always kind of fun. We then go backstage to see Lita trying to apologize to Matt. Matt is being such a little bitch here. He is in the locker room, and she's standing outside the door. Matt, I'm sorry. I didn't see your foot. I'm sorry. And he's throwing his shit in a bag, and he just storms right past her, completely ignores her, and runs out. So Team Extreme is going to have to take a little bit of a break here, I think, to get their shit together and be back on the same page at the Royal Rumble. But Matt, you need to treat your girl better, man. That is fucking ridiculous. After that, another cool match that I wasn't expecting to see on this card. Undertaker taking on Rob Van Dam. This is a hardcore title match, so Rob Van Dam is defending his hardcore title here. RVD held that hardcore title, I believe, through the entire Invasion angle, right? Didn't he beat Jeff Hardy for it in that ladder match? And unless he lost it and regained it, you know, he held it mostly the whole time here, all the way up until December, running into a newly turned heel Undertaker. Now, I don't know when he turned heel. I think it was right after the Survivor Series. It wasn't the show I was at, so it must have been the week after. And that was that segment with Vince McMahon and Jim Ross, where Undertaker basically turned heel. I remember he turned around to Jim Ross and said something like, "Does that mean you're better than me?" And that was a swerve. I did not see that coming at all. Taker decks JR, beats the shit out of JR. Vince is in the ring. And that's when they made JR kiss Vince McMahon's ass, and Vince had the cowboy hat. I talked about that earlier on, where he's acting like a complete asshole. And The Undertaker went heel. Shortly after that, maybe a week after that, he would turn up on TV with all that long red hair completely chopped off, and he was basically Big Evil now, or Booger Red, or whatever Jim Ross calls him, and he's now got the short hair. So he's out to take on RVD for the hardcore title. He's out on the bike, of course. And this was a fun kind of match to have. I mean, this is kind of a dream match. Rob Van Dam had only been in the company for a little while, so there's going to be a lot of guys for him to work with. And he got to work with a lot of guys during the Invasion angle, like Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho and even Steve Austin. Because I think it was at, was it No Mercy or something? It was like the three-way Angle, Austin, RVD. So they were giving RVD some opportunities here. He would be in the big 5-on-5 WWE Alliance match at Survivor Series as well. So you knew that WWE considered him somebody who could work and put him in the ring with some of your best guys. So now it's a hardcore match here. This is mostly a brawl, so we weren't able to get, you know, a good one-on-one in-ring match between these two guys. But it was a really fun brawl as they went all on the outside of the ring. They spent very little time in the ring. As a matter of fact, I think as soon as the match started, they were in the crowd. They were just immediately in the crowd. RVD busted out a fire extinguisher at some point and used that on The Undertaker to try to get away from him, because The Undertaker was quite dominant through this whole thing. The fight makes it up to the stage where most of the action takes place, basically on the set. And Taker rams Rob Van Dam into one of the LED screens. And in a really cool spot up there, Taker gets Rob Van Dam and he goes for a last ride, and he's got him all the way up. And when he goes to lift him, Rob Van Dam grabs a hold of the staging and hangs on to it and starts climbing up the set to get away from The Undertaker, which was a pretty smart move. Now, Undertaker would get near the edge. Rob Van Dam would do the chair thing, try to go for the Van Daminator, but Undertaker ducked, grabbed a hold of Rob Van Dam by the throat, and of course lifted him up and choke slammed him right off the stage through a couple of tables. Taker crawls down and pins Rob Van Dam's lifeless body and becomes the new hardcore champion. Hops on his motorbike, puts the belt around his neck, and rides away with it. So new heel Undertaker with a new attitude and a new haircut is now a new champion, beating Rob Van Dam for the hardcore title. I thought it was pretty good. It was a pretty good little hardcore match, and I think did they work one-on-one during the Invasion? They might have. It's actually very possible that Rob Van Dam faced Undertaker on Raw 1 week during the Invasion storyline, but this was one of the first big encounters I can remember between the two of them, and probably a big thrill for Rob Van Dam, who a year earlier was, working small crowds in ECW. Now he's in the ring on pay-per-view against Undertaker. Yeah, not too shabby. We go backstage again to see Ric Flair hanging out. Of course, Ric Flair is co-owner of WWE with Vince McMahon. Chris Jericho comes in and basically does the same thing that Kurt Angle did earlier on, basically tells Ric Flair that he's going to win. I don't think Ric Flair gives a shit. He just keeps saying, okay, go out there and do it. And Jericho says that Flair will have to present him with something that he never won, an undisputed title. So he's basically telling Flair to get ready to give him those belts tomorrow night on Monday Night Raw. We've got a women's championship match up next. Trish Stratus defending against Jaqueline. Again, got to help me out here. How many times have Trish and Jackie worked in the ring? I don't remember too many encounters between the two of them. I do know Trish, I think, won the title at Survivor Series against Jazz. Is that what happened? I was there. I should remember this shit. So she was kind of a newly crowned women's champion. Trish hadn't quite reached the point where I considered her the best woman in the division at that point, but she was getting there. Trish was showing huge leaps of improvement from the minute she got in the door here, and I was really starting to take notice of Trish, and I think it would be around 2001, 2002. That's when I really became Team Trish and was like, wow, she deserves a ton of credit. But, you know, for being so good, coming in the way she was, hired as a fitness model and being able to get in there and work well, even had that banger of a match a couple of years ago, coming back working with Charlotte at SummerSlam. I have so much respect for Trish and what she was able to achieve from an in-ring perspective in the ring, but she wasn't quite there yet during this time. But, you know, like I said, she was getting better. Match was okay. Typical women's match around this time, just went a couple of minutes, and Trish won with a backslide. So Jaqueline was there just to put her over. Miss Jackie is something else. I've always been a huge fan of her, and I feel like, you know, they could have also used her a lot more. She came out to her PMS music or whatever. I don't even recall in 2001 what Miss Jackie was even doing around this time. I don't even remember seeing her much in the Attitude Era, or during the Invasion angle, I should say. So I don't even know where she was or how often she was on TV, but I don't remember a whole lot about her around this time. I remember her mostly, you know, her WCW run prior to that when she was Miss Texas, and then her WWE run with Sable and stuff. But by the time you got here to 2001, Jaqueline was kind of off my radar. So good, solid win for Trish, the champ, beating a solid, credible women's veteran in Jaqueline. And there you go. We then get a recap of Vince McMahon kissing Rikishi's ass when The Rock did the whole deal with him on, I believe that was SmackDown. And it is kind of interesting. Again, I talk about how WWE sometimes makes questionable booking decisions. I think one of the most questionable ones they've ever done was when they had Rikishi be the guy to run over Steve Austin. And then just a few months after that, they turned him back babyface. And The Rock was involved in that too. The year before, Rikishi and The Rock had a really brutal match against each other at Survivor Series. Now they're friends again after all that shit went down. So Rikishi's back to being a face. WWE, I think, regretted making him a criminal to begin with, making him be the guy that actually ran somebody over with an automobile. Kind of hard to make you a babyface after that, but when you dance and you got a big cottage cheese ass, you really want to cheer for that guy. You know what I mean? So the fans picked right back up where they left off in terms of cheering Rikishi, and they recapped Vince getting his head stuck all the way up there. Rikishi is also the guest at WWF New York. We were down to the last final months of WWF New York until it turned into the World, and then they would just get rid of it altogether. So he is the guest there. He's on the mic talking about how, yeah, he had Vince's head up his ass, and it didn't really feel good. We are now ready for our big championship matches. So we got 3 matches here coming up to determine the first ever undisputed champion in WWE, merging the what is now called the World Championship, which I just did not like. If they just would have waited, you know, a little bit longer, they could have still called this thing the WCW title, but they called it the World title, and I just really feel like if you wanted to do this unification, the main event of WrestleMania is where this should have happened. But instead, we're doing it here. And, of course, Stone Cold Steve Austin going into this show is your WWE champion, and The Rock is the World Heavyweight champion. So you're going to have Rock taking on Chris Jericho and Austin taking on Kurt Angle here. Now, the winner of these 2 matches will face each other in the main event to determine the first ever WWE Undisputed Champion. So Kurt Angle and Stone Cold Steve Austin are up first. Austin defending the title against Kurt Angle. And like I said, this was the 6th pay-per-view in a row that these guys worked together. I believe it all started at Invasion when they were actually on the same team and Austin turned on Team WWF. Then they would work at SummerSlam, right, where Austin would retain the title. Then they would work at Unforgiven where Angle would win the title. Then they would work No Mercy, right, against Rob Van Dam in the three-way. Then they would be on opposite sides. No, they'd be on the same side again at Survivor Series, but Angle would turn and try to go back to WWF, and here they are working together here. So that's 6 straight pay-per-views, I believe, that these two guys worked against each other in 2001. And like I alluded to earlier, had Triple H not gotten hurt, I think he would have been in that position where Angle is. But anyway, Angle and Austin are up first. It was an okay match, but all their best work was already done. I really enjoyed the Angle-Austin feud. And again, you know, they've reversed here. I actually thought the dynamic of Angle being a babyface and Austin being a heel worked. You would have told me that a year ago, I would have thought you were crazy to think that Angle would be making Austin look like a little bitch. And when they attempted that, it actually worked out okay. Remember, Austin was crying blindfolded and Angle pushed him into a pool and all that. And he was really working him over good at SummerSlam, and Austin was able to escape with the title. And then Angle finally beat him and tapped him out. I believe it was a tap out at Unforgiven, which I reviewed that show as well. Or no, we did a watch along of that back in September. So, you know, Angle really had Austin's number here. And you would think right after 9/11 that WWE would want, you know, that American guy. And I think that's what a lot of what Unforgiven was about, to kind of give the fans, you know, something to cheer for or be happy about, you know, to try to bring us together as a nation or whatever. But Kurt Angle was still like Mr. America, man. He was over. The fans weren't like rejecting him as a babyface. I loved Kurt Angle as a babyface because he was so good. He was so fucking good in the ring. So to see him here back to being a little wormy fucking heel, which he is very good at, don't get me wrong. It's just, I think they could have ran with him as a babyface a little bit longer, especially after the tragedies, you know, of 9/11. So they did the deal on Raw where Austin like won the title back. And I think Regal turned on WWE and joined the alliance. And I think that is how Austin was able to gain the title back from Angle. You know, and now here we are going into December, and WWE never really explained why Austin's even a babyface again. It's just like once Survivor Series came and went, it's like they went back to normal. You know, Austin was the chicken shit, dastardly leader of the alliance all the way up until Survivor Series. And then the very next night, like I said, the show I was at in Charlotte, when Ric Flair came back and Austin came out and grabbed the title and Ric Flair gave it to him or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so Austin's a babyface again. Fine. But for the past 7 months, he's been acting like a little bitch. So it was weird. It was weird to see Angle back in his role of being, you know, the cowardly little heel trying to escape, you know, victories and cheat to win and shit against Austin, who now all of a sudden is back to being I'm fearless, badass Steve Austin, when their roles were reversed, you know, 12 weeks prior to this. So very strange here. And like I said, all the matches they had against each other prior to this happening were much better than this. This was just a typical simple match between the two. They didn't do anything out of the ordinary here, anything too crazy. Austin is able to win with a stunner right in the middle of the ring, which Angle sold amazingly. Watch Angle sell the stunner here. He just plopped right up and just planked right down. Pretty funny. Austin pins him for the win and retains the WWE title and moves on to advance to face the winner of The Rock and Jericho in the main event. So that would be coming up next, but not before we get Trish Stratus backstage. After Austin celebrates and leaves, we get a little break here, and Trish is hanging out in a bath towel, and Test just barges in, invades her privacy, and tells her that today's her lucky day, that he's going to allow, he's out of the goodness of his heart, he's going to allow Trish, who is in a towel, to touch his manly body. She can touch it just for a second, but he will allow her to touch him. And she basically laughs in his face and kicks him out, but not before he gets all up on her, totally invading privacy and intimidating her and basically sexually harassing her. And then finally, to Trish's credit, gets pissed and basically physically throws him out of the room, which is kind of funny. So I'm glad that they didn't let Test get too carried away there with Trish and didn't have him written to do something really fucking stupid there. And again, you know, they used to be homies, you know, Test and Trish were part of TNA together. And, you know, now he's being like, oh, I'm going to let you touch me. It's fucking ridiculous. Poor Trish. She just had to hang around with douchebags all night long at Vengeance 2001. And that brings us to our next championship match. This match is for the former WCW championship, now called the World Championship. The Rock defending that World Championship against Chris Jericho. Now, they had also traded this title, correct? I know Jericho beat him for the WCW title. I think that happened at No Mercy. And then Rock would wind up winning it back shortly after that. So now the title is on the line again. This match, I think, was a little bit better than Austin and Kurt Angle. Because Rock was so fun during this time as well. And I really enjoyed The Rock and Chris Jericho's little feud they had here with each other, because they were both on the same side in the invasion angle on Team WWF, but Jericho had kind of gone heelish, and he was feuding with The Rock, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a fun little feud between the two, because prior to this, they had done a couple of funny things on TV. There was some segment on Raw where Rock was talking about Jimmy Jack Jericho or whatever the fuck between them. I think they were in a tag team bout together against somebody or whatever, but they hadn't really developed their rivalry yet. They hadn't developed that tension, that would lead to matches, title changes, and shit like that. So pretty early on in the match, they find themselves on the outside of the ring, and Jericho has got Rock up on the table, and he's going for a move. The Rock reverses it and hits Jericho with a pretty gnarly-looking DDT. Jericho basically just went face first through what I believe was the Spanish announce table. Pretty good-looking bump there. Jericho later on in the ring, after he would recover, of course, he would go for a people's elbow on The Rock, but The Rock would counter with a sharpshooter, which Jericho would reverse and counter with a sharpshooter of his own. Pretty good little sequence there. We get a rock bottom to Jericho, and that's when Vince McMahon makes his presence known. So Vince is all over this show. He'd be in the main event too. He's out there, and The Rock hits him and then refocuses energy back on Chris Jericho, hits a spine buster and the people's elbow on Jericho. And I think at this point, Vince is up on the apron. So The Rock drags Vince in and just beats the shit out of him. And during the confusion and all the ref confusion and distraction and all of that, Jericho hits The Rock from behind with a low blow and hits the rock bottom on The Rock for the win. He actually got beat by his own move here after the low blow and the Vince interference. So Vince had a plan here tonight, and he mentioned in his opening promo, he who laughs last laughs loudest or whatever, or he's going to get the last laugh or whatever it is. So his plan is starting to come to fruition here. He is out to screw The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and part one is done. The Rock is lost. Jericho's moved on, and it's pretty funny because he's celebrating his victory because he's just won the championship. He's the new World Heavyweight Champion, but before he can even do anything, Austin's music hits. And I think what WWE had intended here is for Austin's music to hit and the crowd to go nuts and Jericho to have this like, oh shit look on his face. And he did have that look on his face, but the crowd reaction was kind of mild. It's one of the only mild babyface reactions I've ever seen in my life for Steve Austin. And I think a big part of that was the fans in the audience were legit bummed out that they weren't going to get a Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin final. I think that's what everybody was expecting to see. So Austin is now coming down to the ring. You would think he's got this big advantage against a spent Chris Jericho. Austin has had a little bit of time to recover since his match with Kurt Angle, but he is followed into the ring by Angle, who follows him right in there with a chair and nails Austin with a chair before he can even get his hands on Chris Jericho. And then The Rock comes back in because The Rock got fucked over, and he ends up hitting Chris Jericho with a rock bottom. So you got Austin and Jericho both laid out at the hands of Kurt Angle and The Rock, and that's when the bell rings, which is pretty funny. So now the match is underway. Main event for all the marbles, Undisputed Championship on the line. Champion Steve Austin taking on champion Chris Jericho. Winner take all. Like I said, crowd seemed a little bit upset about no Austin and Rock final, and they would probably be a little bit more upset here in just a little bit. Jericho and Austin immediately start brawling. You got to remember, both of these guys have got a match under their belt. It does seem a little bit sluggish at times, but they pick things up on the outside of the ring. In a really interesting spot, Jericho goes for the walls of Jericho on the table on Austin, just like he did to Triple H in that match that Triple H tore his quad in. So that was kind of an interesting spot. Austin is able to reverse it and toss Jericho off. He hits the floor. Jericho winds up back in the ring with Austin, and he puts Austin in the walls of Jericho, but Austin makes it to the ropes to save himself. Then we get a ref bump, and now shit starts getting crazy. So Earl is the referee for this thing. He takes a bump on the outside of the ring, and we get another low blow, and this time a stunner by Jericho. So just like he did to The Rock, hit him with a low blow and hit him with his own move, he does the same thing to Austin here, although we have no referee until Vince shows up dragging Nick Patrick with him. And Patrick gets in the ring, and it was really interesting. It did not look good. Looked kind of like a botch here. Patrick is supposed to go in and count the fall. Ric Flair comes down to pull Patrick out, but the problem is Nick Patrick runs in there to count the fall, but he's standing up, and he drops down to his stomach and almost like backs up. So his foot is sticking out under the bottom rope enough for Ric Flair to be able to reach it to drag him out. So that looked way too staged. I did not like that at all, but Flair does pull Nick Patrick out and decks him, so it is kind of funny to see a little WCW brawl here between these two WCW mainstays, Nick Patrick and Ric Flair. Vince McMahon would then jump in and nail Ric Flair, starts beating him up, and then throws him into the post, which Ric Flair sells like $1 million. I mean, if anything, this match did more to build Ric Flair and Vince McMahon than it did to build Jericho as your new champion. Flair takes a hell of a bump and goes flying off to the sidelines on the outside of the ring after Vince disposes of him. And then we get a low blow to Jericho by Austin, and at this point, Austin sees that Vince McMahon is out there and goes after him and attacks Vince. He starts beating the shit out of Vince, and then we get Austin and Jericho back in the ring. This time, Austin puts the walls of Jericho on Jericho, so he's trying to beat him with his own move now. We've got no Earl Hebner, we've got no Nick Patrick, we've got no Ric Flair, and we've got no Vince McMahon. They are all disposed of on the outside of the ring. Jericho is in the ring tapping like a bitch to his own move until Booker T, who I don't think we had seen until Survivor Series, or since Survivor Series, because technically he lost his job when the Alliance lost. He comes in the ring, takes the belt, and nails Austin in the back of the head with the title belt, allowing Jericho to roll over Austin and cover him. Vince McMahon picks up Earl Hebner, the original referee, throws him in the ring, and Earl makes a very slow, very deliberate 3 count on Austin, and Jericho wins the Undisputed title. Very few cheers in the audience for that. A lot of people were pretty shocked that it went that way. Vince McMahon is shown celebrating and laughing last on the stage as Jericho clutches both championships and he celebrates, and it was quite the moment. I mean, I appreciated WWE not going with the obvious main event of, of course, if you're going to unify your championships, of course you're going to put those on like a WWE guy like Rock or Austin, and giving it to Jericho, who had only been there a couple of years, was an interesting decision, one that I liked because I was always a Jericho fan. I thought he would do great, with those championships. And you talk about making a guy, to this day, Chris Jericho still talks about how he beat both of these guys in the same night. And I make a lot of these comparisons now, in AEW, when some fans complain that some of their bigger stars are working with guys, that aren't as big as stars as them or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but one day if these guys do become big stars, which some of them definitely will, they're going to look back to those matches with Bryan Danielson and CM Punk as career building defining moments for them, just like this one here was for Chris Jericho. So I thought it was great that they did it this way because everything was so discombobulated after the invasion, and putting the belt on Austin, who I was still getting used to him being a babyface again. Because it just happened overnight. I don't know if he would have been the right guy to even hold both of these titles. And like I said, I would have preferred if they would have held this off until WrestleMania 18. That's when I would have done this entire angle. But this also brought back Booker T. And this, of course, would be the setup for our big grocery store brawl between Austin and Booker T that everybody still talks about to this day. And we're about to be the 20th anniversary of that as well. So all in all, not a bad pay-per-view, but I can only grade this thing maybe a C+. I give it a good grade, maybe a B- at the most, but I'm going to give it in that C to B range. I think it was a good swerve at the end, putting the titles on Jericho, but remembering where I was at this time, it was a swerve that I did see coming, and it was at least on my mind that Jericho had a much better chance than people thought of coming away with these titles, and so did Kurt Angle for that matter. But I felt like WWE had a chance here since the other 3 guys were essentially already made, and Jericho has had tastes of gold. Remember, he beat Triple H in 99 or whenever that was. When the hell was that? Or early 2000 on Raw, and he held the title for like 5 seconds, and then he beat the Rock for the WCW title and only held it for a couple of weeks. This needed to be his official launching, and that's what it was here. And they created a main event player in Chris Jericho on this night right here in the city that I live in, San Diego. So congratulations to Chris Jericho for being the first ever Undisputed Champion. Of course, this wouldn't mean much for very long, because as soon as they make this decision, they undo it all. Less than a year later, what was it, 9 months? 9 months from this moment, right after SummerSlam in 2002, they would bring that big gold belt right back out. So did he really become the Undisputed Champion here for fucking 9 months until they undid it again. And then they would unify them again, correct? With Cena and Randy Orton, only to ununify them again, which is what we have now with the WWE title and the Universal title. But back in these days, this was really as close to a WCW and WWE and WCW title unification as you're ever going to get. And I guess technically we got it, even though it would have been way better if we had a lot bigger players involved and we did some big 32-man tournament, over the span of 4 months to crown the new champion. Something like that might have been kind of fun. It would have presented some really interesting matchups and all of that, but WWE did it the way they did it, and there you go. So I will be curious and interested to read all of your thoughts on the show in the comments below. So let me know what you think, and make sure you stay subscribed to the channel, because we got a lot of great watch-alongs and reviews coming up in the month of December, including Armageddon 1999. We're going to do a watch-along of this coming Sunday on the channel, so make sure you're here for that on December 12th. We've got Starrcade 1998 watch-along coming up, Starrcade 1993 watch-along coming up. I've got a Slammy Awards 1987 review hitting the channel right before Christmas, and a big year-end Q&A on the 30th. So send over your questions to goodmikework@gmail.com if you want to participate in that. Thank you very much for watching on this nice Thursday afternoon, and I will talk to you guys real soon, and we will be back up here before you know it with another classic pay-per-view review. Y'all take care. Peace.